Okay, welcome everybody. We thank you for joining us at AdBuzz. I'm joined by Rob Schwartz of TBWA in Los Angeles, and Rob is on the other side of the world right now, so bear with us if there's any video freezing or anything going on. He's in Australia, 5 o'clock-ish our time, and 7 o'clock in the morning his time, and we thank Rob. Thank you so much for joining us, and we're going to discuss the Nissan spots and some of the creative behind it, and what you guys are doing. You guys are rocking stuff down in LA, so welcome. Thanks so much for joining us.
Cool. Good to be here. Good to be here.
So the Nissan spots are some of a favorite work that personally that I've seen. The insight that you guys have on that is just killer. Walk us through how you got to that. How did that come about?
Well, first of all, thanks, and I'm glad the work's connecting. I think like any great creative that you do, it comes from a true insight and a true truth about a product and a brand. And I think just to back up, I think about a year ago we got together with senior management in Nissan in North America. And we have a tight meeting. It's just a couple folks, but we really lay out the issues. And I think for some of your business school students out there, is the kind of meeting where you can be very honest. And I think out of honesty, I think you can really make big things happen. But it was a tight group, and one of the honest things that came out of this meeting was a frustration that the brand had a killer portfolio and a new electric car coming, the first one coming. I just had, in the room, we just said, why does Nissan have to be behind Honda and Toyota? Why do we always have to be number 3?
Yeah, sure.
And we just took that ambition, and that was kind of one piece of it. The second piece that was kind of interesting was that the guys in Tokyo who design and engineer the products were working under this philosophy of human-centric engineering.
Okay.
So human-centric innovation.
Okay.
And it sounds a bit wonky, but the fact that they were really thinking about people, and they really were taking the best ideas in the world, these innovations, and making them available to the most people, we thought was a really wonderful thing to tell, to communicate.
Right.
So you take ambition and you combine that with humans and try to find insights for humans, and then touting innovations, and suddenly you have a recipe for creating nice work.
Right.
So that's kind of the strategic underpinning of what you're seeing today. I think for us, what we wanted to do creatively was tell very human stories. So if you look at something like the polar bear spot, it's even though it's a world-changing idea, we tried to bring it down to a single individual. The fact that if you make this one choice, you can actually affect things in the world. And I think the polar bear with gratitude reinforces that notion. There's a Maxima spot where a guy finds out that he's pregnant.
My personal favorite.
There's a really thanks. And there's a real I think you can really relate to that moment when your wife tells you, "Hey, we're going to have a baby," and you're kind of like, "Oh, this is awesome."
Yeah.
And then in that second, you go, "How about all the stuff I like to do just as a dude?" You know?
Yeah.
And so we found a great way to articulate that that notion of kind of hey, you need to grow up, but don't grow old, and taking the Z and turning it into a Maxima, I think became a really nice articulation of that.
Yeah, it's great.
And then I think if you look at something like what we call a Kidzilla spot, I'm sure a lot of creatives out there get the brief. Oh, we have to tout quality.
Yeah.
And there's nothing kind of more vexing when you get that brief about, hey, we have to demonstrate quality.
Yeah.
And we just found a very inventive way to do it. There's a young team at the agency that these two gals at the agency just said, do we have to show a test facility? Can we come up with something, maybe metaphoric or something, different to say a very old thing?
Yeah.
Kind of a very conventional brief, but a very unconventional execution.
Yeah.
And again, I think it came from a human insight that, these kids like to destroy things.
Yeah.
The quality engineers like to destroy things.
Yeah.
But if the car could stand up to that destruction, we can, tell something compelling.
So just for the record, the Childzilla, that was created, the concept came from, Kidzilla, that came from females.
Yeah, there were. We've got a terrific team in the agency. Actually, they have a blog. I'll give them a little blog. They got a blog called Lali Adverts, Lali Adverts.
Okay.
And again, I think for people just starting out in the business, I think it's a good blog for you to take a look at because you'll get to feel their experiences as they traipse through the agency.
Yeah, for
And
sure. Because I mean,
you
to
know,
look at that spot,
go-
Rob, you would think that, I mean, as a creative person, I would think, I picture myself as a little boy playing with those cars and just smashing the crap out of them, and you would automatically, one would just make that connection that, well, that must be a guy concept. But so that's
right.
cool. That is so cool.
Well, I think again, I think this is another interesting process notion, I guess, about our business. There's within the creation of advertising. You need someone to come up with the idea, right?
Yep.
You need a generator, a creator, a visionary, but then you also need a spotter,
Hmm.
right? So when someone comes up with the idea, you also need somebody at the table who goes, "Hey, that's the one.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the idea that we should do."
Yeah.
So I think what was nice about this situation is we actually have the group creative director on the brand, Margaret Keene. She's a mom,
Hmm.
and you've got these two gals who came out very fresh, which was cool. And then you do have a bunch of dudes in the room as well. And I think that the combination of a fresh approach, but then the validation
Yeah.
of people who've been in the business and also moms,
Yeah.
and suddenly you go, okay, I know the spot we need to produce.
Yeah. Well, hey, man, it works. They all
Cool.
work. They're very, very well done. So outside of the Nissan work, where does the idea come from? Where does creativity come from? Where do you think that, like, I mean, if you could answer that, I'm sure you'd be a multi-millionaire, but everyone wonders, where does it come from? What do you think?
I've been really kind of cottoning to something that Mel Brooks said. Mel Brooks, the famous comedian,
Yeah.
and he was talking about this bit that he did called "2,000-Year-Old Man."
Okay.
I was reading this interview by him, and he said that his creativity came from fear.
Hmm.
That it was this notion that he was backed into a wall and that he just like it forced every fiber in his being to come up with something.
Mm.
So he got backed into the corner from Carl Reiner, who was his partner, would ask him a question about this 2,000-year-old man,
Hmm.
who discovered the fact that men and women can have relationships,
Hmm.
and he just had this thing. He said, Bernie, the guy named Bernie, and Carl Reiner presses him and he says, well. How did Bernie discover it? And Mel Brooks says, and again, he talks about his process of fear. He didn't know what to say.
Yeah.
And he just said, we were in the dark room and Bernie just said, hey, there's ladies here. So, and again, it sounds kind of crazy, but I think there's a sense that fear is a good place for innovation and creative invention, because I think you're fearful of a time constraint, or you're fearful of somebody else is working on this and they may come up with it.
Right.
And there's a sense that there's a fear that, can I do this, as a business? Can I do this as a career? I mean, there's all kinds of fear motivators that come in. So I guess maybe fear is the motivator. I think that's the very negative motivator. I think there's a
Right.
positive motivator,
Hmm.
which is, I sort of liken it to exposure, like just like seeing things,
Okay. Yeah.
and going to a Starbucks and getting your coffee and watching people.
Hmm.
Watch what they do. Watch
Yeah.
how people interact with a dog. Watch how they interact with their children.
Yeah.
Go to a museum and feed yourself, with, how do you do, a painting? What's considered sculpture? I'm going to
Right.
look at that. Some guy found a piece of wood and he, carved it in some way.
Yeah.
And it's all that sort of stuff that eventually, works in your brain. I think between the fear and the things that you feed your brain, and suddenly, you know what, you have an idea.
Yeah. Yeah. That's brilliant. It's a great insight to creativity for sure.